You did not keep hoping because you were blind. You kept hoping because the man he almost was felt too painful to lose. Because if he was never really becoming what you needed, then you were not just losing him. You were losing the meaning you gave to all the waiting. He did not have to change much to keep you there. A softer tone, a small apology, one almost honest moment. Just enough to make you feel like the man you needed was still somewhere inside him. And that was the part your mind held on to, because letting go was not only about losing him, it was about facing how long you had waited, how much love you had poured in, how many times you had swallowed your own hurt and called it patience. So when he showed you a little warmth, your hope started rebuilding him again. You told yourself maybe this time he sees it. Maybe this time it reaches him. Maybe all the confusion before this was fear, bad timing, pressure, pain. Your mind kept trying to turn the pattern into a story that could still end well, because the other story hurt more. The other story said you had already spent pieces of yourself on someone who kept meeting you halfway, then stepping back. And that is why the smallest change in him could feel so big in you. You were not waiting for perfection. You were waiting for proof that your love had not been misplaced. That is what made this so hard to admit. You could feel the truth in your body before you could say it out loud. The pause before checking your phone. The tightness in your chest when his energy changed. The way one kind message could calm you down more than it should have. Relief became your evidence. Not peace, just relief. The cost started there. You began treating almost like a rival. You began calling temporary change growth. You began protecting the version of him that made the waiting feel worth it. And quietly, without meaning to, you started building your future around a man who kept giving you glimpses instead of consistency. You were not holding on to nothing. That would have been easier. You were holding on to the parts of him that kept interrupting the truth. The way he could suddenly sound sincere. The way he sometimes looked at you like he finally understood the pain he was causing. The rare moments when he seemed softer, clearer, closer. Those moments were small, but they landed in the exact place where your hope was still alive. And your mind did what hurting minds do when they want the pain to mean something. It gathered those moments like proof. Proof that he was trying. Proof that he cared more than he showed. Proof that this was not all for nothing. So even when the pattern kept repeating, you kept making room for the exception. That is what made staying make sense at the time. Because if he really was changing, then maybe the mixed signals would become part of the story before things finally became steady. Maybe the swallowed questions would one day feel worth it. Maybe the waiting would stop feeling humiliating. You were not just hoping for a different man. You were hoping the pain would eventually make sense. That is a hard thing to walk away from, especially when he gave you just enough to keep the door open. A thoughtful message after distance. A quiet apology after disappointment. A brief stretch where he felt present, and you let your body relax for the first time in days. Then it would shift again. And each time it shifted, your mind went back to the warm version of him, not because you were foolish, but because the warm version felt emotionally unfinished. You kept thinking, maybe that is the real one. Maybe that is the one I need to trust. Maybe the rest is just what happens when he gets scared. So you stayed close to possibility. But possibility is cruel when it keeps borrowing the shape of change without becoming change. And little by little, hope stopped feeling comforting. It started feeling like work. You had to keep explaining the gaps, softening the facts, and carrying both what happened and what you wished it meant. That was the hope that kept you there. Not simple denial, not weakness, just the deep wish that one day his actions would finally match the version of him your heart had already made room for. The cost was not only that he gave you less, the cost was that you slowly learned to live on less. You felt it in small moments first. In the message you rewrote so you would not sound too affected. In the question you decided not to ask because you already knew how quickly honesty could make him pull away. In the way you checked his mood before you let yourself have a need, you got careful. Not because love made you feel safe, but because uncertainty trained you to become easier to handle. You started editing yourself in real time. Softer tone, smaller request, less pressure, less truth. You were trying to keep the connection from collapsing, and your mind started treating your own silence like maturity. But it was not peace. It was strain that had learned how to sit still. Patience became the name you gave to swallowed hurt. Understanding became the name you gave to carrying confusion alone. And hope became the way you survived from one small sign to the next. That is what this kind of waiting does. It makes crumbs feel meaningful because your hunger has been growing quietly for so long. So one good night with him could erase 3 bad weeks. One soft apology could make you question your own memory. One moment of closeness could make you hate yourself for how quickly you lit back up. And then came the part you barely said out loud. You started feeling guilty for needing clarity, as if asking where you stood was too heavy, as if wanting steadiness was somehow unfair, as if your pain became less valid every time he gave you just enough tenderness to confuse it. That was the real cost. Not only the waiting, not only the disappointment. You were losing access to your own voice while trying to protect his comfort. You became easier to keep because you became easier to disappoint. And deep down, you knew something was wrong. Because love was supposed to let you exhale. But with him, relief kept replacing peace. And your body knew the difference, even when your hope kept trying not to. The shift did not happen because you stopped caring. It happened because you got tired of crossing yourself just to stay close to him. There is a quiet moment in this kind of story. No scene anyone else would notice. No big speech. Just you. Finally seeing that hope has been making decisions your dignity would never make. Hope kept saying, wait a little longer. Hope kept saying, maybe this softer version is the real one. Hope kept saying, don't be too harsh, he's trying in the only way he can. But your life was being shaped by a man who still needed to be translated, excused, emotionally finished in your mind. Only then could he feel safe enough to love. And that was the line. Not that he was imperfect, not that he was wounded, but that you kept paying with your peace to stay connected to his potential. So the limit became simple. You stopped treating small changes like promises. You stopped calling confusion a phase. You stopped making his inconsistency mean you should become more patient, more understanding, more careful. You stopped helping the pattern survive. That is what changed. You let yourself feel the longing without turning it into a reason to stay open. You let yourself remember the good without using it to erase the whole. You stopped arguing with the truth just because it hurt. And maybe the hardest part was this. You realized letting go was not only losing him, it was finally admitting how much of yourself you had spent trying to make this become something it never fully became. But even that truth started to feel cleaner than the waiting. Because once you saw it clearly, staying the same would have cost more than grieving it. So you did not need to make him cruel. You did not need to make yourself foolish. You only had to stop handing your future to almost. That was the moment hope stopped deciding for you. And then, slowly, your life starts returning to you. Not all at once, not dramatically, but in small, honest ways. You wake up, and your first thought is not about what he meant. You reach for your phone and feel less urgency in your chest. You stop building your day around whether he is warm, distant, clear, or gone. That is how you know something real is changing. You are no longer spending your peace trying to make his potential feel solid. You are no longer asking your heart to survive on almost. You are no longer turning tiny shifts into reasons to hand over more time, more softness, more of your life. And what comes back is not hardness. It is your steadiness, your own voice, your ability to tell the truth without shrinking it so someone else can bear it. Your right to need clarity and not feel ashamed for it. Your right to call inconsistency what it is, even when there were good moments inside it. You start to see that letting go did not erase what you felt. It just stopped asking you to keep paying for it. That matters, because you were never asking for too much. You were asking the wrong place to carry something real. And when you stop waiting for him to become the man your hope kept defending, something tender begins to settle inside you. A calmer breath, a quieter mind, a life that no longer swings on someone else's half-readiness. You do not lose your softness. You stop placing it where it has to beg for shape. You do not become cold. You become clear. And clarity has its own kind of peace. Not the anxious relief you felt when he briefly came close. Real peace. The kind that lets you stand inside your own life again. So no, the hidden reason you kept hoping was never that you were weak. It was that hope protected you from the pain of seeing how much you had already spent. But now you can see it. You can grieve what you spent without calling yourself foolish. You can let the hope end without letting your heart close. And you can return to yourself with dignity.